In this lecture, I want to focus on someone who knew all of these people personally, who lived at exactly this time, but yet possessed none of these advantages. He was an incompetent general, had no distinguished ancestors, came from a family of modest economic means, often struck others as being vain and self-centered, and repeatedly chose the losing side in political struggles. Despite these failings, he had an extremely long and successful political career, eventually rising to the consulship, the very highest elected office in the Roman government. In an era of giants, how did such a man even survive, let alone succeed? The answer, of course, is that he too had one special skill. He had a talent with words. He possessed an extraordinary ability to get up in front of crowds and persuade them of what he wanted them to believe. In fact, he's often regarded as the greatest public speaker of all time. His name was Marcus Tullius Cicero. Cicero was born in 106 BC, which means that he was just a few years older than Julius Caesar. Rather than being from one of the established aristocratic or senatorial clans, his family was only of modest equestrian status from the little town of Arpinum. In the political scene at Rome, Cicero was a novus homo, a new man, who lacked illustrious ancestors, and thus he had to work extra hard to claw his way up the political ladder. For those studying Cicero and his era, one very useful thing is that he wrote a lot, and I mean a lot. His surviving writings comprise not only more than 36 of the speeches that he composed, but also philosophical works, political treatises, and meditative essays on topics such as grief, fate, duty, and religious practices. He even published 7 entire volumes consisting exclusively of the letters, over 900 in number, that he wrote to friends and family, along with many of their replies. In sheer number of words, more writings survive from Cicero than from any other Roman writer. And, in large part because of this, the late Republic is one of the best documented periods in ancient history. Finally, his works include a number of very interesting handbooks describing his ideas regarding how to be an effective and persuasive public speaker. Whether making an argument in a courtroom, giving an oration to a crowd of citizens in the forum, or just trying to convince any audience through verbal persuasion. In addition to laying out a philosophy concerning the Roman orator and his role in society, these handbooks discuss issues such as training and education for orators, practical tips and advice on public speaking, how to compose, memorize, and deliver speeches, and they contain a wealth of illustrative examples drawn from previous history as well as Cicero's own experiences. I'll return to Cicero's political career later, but first, let's look at ancient Roman oratory in greater detail, both because it was the vehicle for Cicero's rise and because of the absolutely central role that public speaking played in Roman politics generally. The struggle among Roman elites for power was both an intensely competitive and a highly public process. Dignitas or status was everything to a Roman politician, and the more visible you were, the better. In this highly charged, cutthroat atmosphere, one of the most effective means for winning public recognition was to deliver a memorable oration. And Roman society was clearly designed to maximize opportunities for making big, dramatic speeches. Such occasions included speaking at meetings of the Senate, giving orations at assemblies of the people in the forum, inspiring bands of soldiers before a battle, speechifying at funerals and public entertainments, and attacking opponents or defending clients in the law courts. In preparation for such events, the education that upper-class Roman boys were given was heavily focused on training them to become effective and persuasive public speakers. It's important to note how many of these potential oratorical situations targeted audiences composed of the general public. For example, major law cases in Republican Rome were not tried within the confines of a courthouse as they are today, but were instead staged in public spaces such as the Roman Forum or among the nearby colonnades. Often a set of wooden benches would be set up in the open air for the magistrates, the prosecution, and the defense, and then there would be a huge crowd of random bystanders densely gathered around this space, pressing in on it from every side. And these audiences were not passive, but were highly vocal, applauding, jeering, shouting out praise or abuse, reacting to points made by one side or the other, and even heckling the speakers. As you might imagine, not infrequently, riots or other disturbances broke out, and lawyers learned to play as much to the crowd as they did to the jury or judge. Simply put, many ordinary Romans viewed law cases as a form of entertainment. They were considered yet another category of public spectacle, and a case involving a famous figure or a shocking crime or accusation could attract a massive audience. Particularly in the late Republic, Cicero's time, there was a whole string of very high-profile law cases implicating many of the most prominent Romans who were brought to trial for a range of sensational crimes. Some of the accusations leveled against upper-class defendants at trials of this period include murder, arson, incest, forgery of public documents, poisoning, adultery with one's stepmother, corruption, improper use of armed gangs, sacrilege, sexual misconduct, electoral bribery, and even the desecration of a sacred grove. Today, people often comment that we see a lot of lurid celebrity trials, but our era is mild compared to the Roman Republic in this regard. Rome had no class of professional lawyers. Instead, politicians who were known as particularly good public speakers were often asked to deliver speeches on behalf of either the prosecution or the defense. The most effective of these lawyers could themselves become celebrities and gain coveted status if they were consistently entertaining and successful or won big, high-profile cases. This was Cicero's route to fame. He first gained prominence and renown as an up-and-coming Roman politician by making a name for himself in Rome's law courts. Cicero was obviously skilled at oratory, but what made him stand out? Fortunately, here we can turn to the manuals on oratory that he wrote in order to ferret out his secrets for effective public speaking. At the core of Cicero's approach to persuasion is one fundamental concept. This is the belief that people are primarily ruled by emotions. Accordingly, Cicero says that if you're trying to persuade an audience, then your goal is not necessarily to appeal to logic or reason. While these things are useful, the most essential goal is to stimulate an audience's emotions. If you can get an audience emotionally invested, or riled up, then they can be made to believe whatever you want them to. According to the strategy, if you can but stir up the emotions, then many elements that are usually important, such as the facts, evidence, or even the truth, suddenly matter much less. To quote Cicero's own words, "To sway the audience's emotions is victory, for among all things it is the single most important in winning verdicts. And nothing else is more important than emotion." Cicero employed many different strategies to achieve this end. A particularly interesting one was the use of props and visual aids. Cicero said that an orator is like an actor in this regard. And just like an actor, he has to prepare his stage and furnish it with the necessary props. For example, prior to one speech delivered to the people in the Roman Forum, Cicero arranged for a new statue of the god Jupiter to be set up nearby. Then, during the speech, he alluded to it and asked the crowd how they could possibly stand by and not take action when they were right under the very eyes of the god. Just as a modern speech